Now I would like to invite Sergey Miller, who will tell us about the evolution of the digital Basemap and the spatial data concepts. While he's taking his seat, Mr. Krasnikov mentioned the influence of professionals on the formation of the industry, and perhaps everybody knows that Mr. Miller has been a long-term leader and a ever-standing president of GIS-Association, one of the founding members of GIS-Association, and this is the association who has the biggest impact on the development of the cartography and mapping industry. Am I right, Mr. Miller?
It is true, and it's very deplorable, I must say. I'm very happy to welcome you all. You all know that I'm an enthusiast in many ways, so I'm not going to use any slides today. You don't say it, yeah. I will talk about the most important thing, and that is I seem to have no replacement. It's not something that I'm very passionate about, but it just so happens that some uniformity that the community that was created in our country takes different shapes. There is the Russian Society of Land Surveyors and a number of other entities with extensive backgrounds. GIS-Association was born in 1994 when other digital technology began to develop, and we tried to consolidate or integrate efforts of professionals toward generating market relations, because you remember the full name of the association, which includes geoinformatics and the market. As for geoinformatics, it has had a colossal success. It's unstoppable. It will take a lot of stopping. Russia and other countries go through rapid development. Research efforts are underway, but sometimes we become sad, mappers. But in fact, it's just an implication of global development. In your gadgets, you have Google Maps and Yandex Maps, and it could be what could be called as a map, but in fact it should be called geospatial data set. I don't know how it reflects on the title of your conference. We need to keep the tradition, but if you get technical, if you, in true honesty, you have to modify the title of the conference as well. From imagery to geospatial data sets. That's how it should be called, not from imagery to maps. But these systems do evolve very rapidly, and it's only the question of how they will be organized, whether they will be organized in a way that is very close to traditional notion of a map, or they will be organized in a different way. I'm talking about mass product here, mass production, and a mass consumption product. When it comes to prose, that's somewhat different. So whether they will be organized as the aforementioned interfaces of search engines of Yandex and Google that we all know about, whether they will be organized as Mr. Konechny mentioned, and you all know about that. I used that a lot during my travels to Western Europe as 3D panoramas or 3D models. So these are the concerns that I wanted to discuss. There is one trend obvious to me. The more people will benefit from our services, the more consumers we will have, the more in demand and useful we will be. And I do hope that this is a task that everyone who has come here is facing. Now, how can you implement this task? From my point of view, there is an evident and important trend here. It was implemented in the geospatial dataset model, and our GIS-Association is something that has brought it to the national level. The idea goes through a lot of challenges. Geospatial data is the word combination that is only beginning to find its place in regulations. There was one person speaking before me, another person, Mr. Roslikov, who are the promoters of this term, geospatial data. The concept itself was adopted in 2006, and if we look at key provisions of it, it has not been implemented in our country effectively. There are a lot of reasons contributing to it. It's something that we can discuss on Wednesday during one of the roundtables. For now, I think it's enough to say, including for our foreign counterparts, that the infrastructure of geospatial data is a term that was generated as a digital environment that facilitates exchange of geospatial data sets. Today, as we witness substantive and technological changes in sources of geospatial data, we are forced to conclude that the tasks and objectives of this infrastructure need to be supplemented with another task, and that is anyone wishing to establish or produce a map or geospatial data set need to have the opportunity to do it right, to do this correctly, and be integrated in the existing systems. So it's all about unity, integration, and it becomes of utmost importance. Mr. Konechny showed us a lot of things today, but there was one project that was not mentioned, and that is OpenStreet Map. It's a crowdsourcing-based project. This is our future, to tell you the truth, as however sad it may sound to many mappers, this is our future, because this is the database that a lot of entities worked on, and there are a lot of complaints, I must say, but the essence is that the crowd or many users connect as creators of geospatial data, and it is these connections that drive the change from an environment of exchange to an environment where you can correctly create and post. And in this connection, the first word of the conference becomes critical. We all know that to create and describe by the reference, we need two ways. That is, one of them is direct land survey, and the second one is using maps, or something that is used in the capacity of a Basemap, orthophoto. So using this image, we can obtain coordinates. From this, an important conclusion can be derived. What Rakurs does is probably the most important thing for infrastructure development, because orthophoto digital map done correctly for the whole world, Victor and I formulate a geometrically correct and geometrically referenced to avoid using other terms. So if this model can be created if it is accessible for everyone. This gives us a chance to become mappers. And this becomes one of the tasks of the infrastructure. Victor, please stop me when I go out of the schedule. So on this conjecture, I look at what's happening globally, and Victor knows about this. This conference coincided with trips to Denmark, Sweden, and Germany, and France is the last point in our itinerary. So we talked with lead experts from the Netherlands, discussed trends of open source data, and they told us that it is them who help consolidate an abundance of data from different databases, put them in this space, in the environment, virtual environment, which must inform or drive our decision. And in a certain way, the Russian Federation is quite advanced, I must say, because what Rosregister has done in terms of establishing 1 million scale coverage, mentioned by Mr. Konechny, done by Scanex, it's the first step in the right direction. We just have to take a few other steps and make available and accessible something that has been established in aerial orthophoto images for Russia, I mean. This will be a robust matrix that can guide decision making. What are the challenges of the process? It's just that Google creates one matrix. It has its own world, one world. Yandex, on the other hand, creates another matrix. Rosregister creates yet another matrix. And here I go along with some of the points made earlier, and that is we need one matrix. We can include different content, put different content in it, but the matrix must be one and the same. This becomes particularly relevant for Europe. As shown by Professor Konechny. This is particularly important for our country because, the truth be told, the word market is equated to market, like flea market, unorganized market. And it's not only about geoinformatics, it's a general remark. And in order for market relations to be sustainable, you have to have stability in funding, for example. And in Europe, there are well-established traditions in terms of the boundaries of property rights. It's important to have and to know these boundaries, and the government must protect these boundaries and this property. And if we step outside this room, we will know that the property owner, will have certain obligations and restrictions to use the property. And obligations is something that everyone must know about and be publicly available. And this is where the biggest challenge comes, because these restrictions and responsibilities are the product of various regulations written by forest people, urban developers. Urban developers always give you some red lines, which you're not supposed to cross. Yesterday's trip into the forest has been very important in that regard, showing the available restrictions. So, infrastructure provides you with a chance to generate geospatial data. And on the other hand, it provides you with a quick tool to see what are the boundaries of property and what types of uses are available. So, to me, this has been the most important message that I wanted to carry forward on the subject of my presentation. I anticipate that anything relating to imaging of the Earth with various degree of detail holds a lot of prospects. What's important is that we agree that we share one planet, we will continue to habitate it, and the more integrated data we have, the easier our living will be, the better understanding we will have. In order to make that happen, we need to have not only the colossal amount of work that has been carried out before, we need one matrix, shared matrix. And this will put the capper to my presentation. Thank you, Sergey. Are there any questions? Alexei? Hello, Sergey Adolfovich, Mr. Sidelnikov. Don't forget to introduce yourself. We know each other well. Well, that I know, but others don't. Okay, can you briefly summarize your travels to Europe? I mean, just key points, without going into too much detail, just a general picture. I'm going to disrupt the schedule of this conference if I give you an extensive emphasis. There's so much interesting stuff that I learned. There is one clear trend. The basic map, in traditional understanding, spatial basis in a different evolutionary spin, and space projects like Copernicus and the others are all free, open source, freely distributable digital data. Advanced countries use the mode where they impose the usage of them on municipalities, and then businesses begin to use them as well. If I were to set out a global trend, everything done using budgetary money is free, including for foreigners. I wish we had that in our country as well. Any other questions? Thank you. I agree with Sergey in that the title of the conference has become obsolete. We are contemplating